January 17, 1945. Before dawn, over the cold waters of the Pacific, the sky begins to vibrate with a distant, unfamiliar thunder. It is not the crack of naval guns or the howl of carrier aircraft. It is deeper, heavier, an approaching mechanical pulse. High above the cloud layer, silver shapes glide in disciplined lines, their engines droning in unison. Over Japan's main islands, the night air carries a sound Japanese commanders have learned to fear, the sustained hum of massed American B-29 superfortresses. This moment matters because it marked a turning point not just in the air war, but in the psychological collapse of Japan's strategic leadership. By late 1944 and early 1945, the Imperial Japanese Command still believed the home islands could be defended through distance, weather, and national will. Japan's military doctrine had long rested on the assumption that no enemy could strike the heart of the empire in overwhelming force. The arrival of the B-29 shattered that belief. These raids were not isolated attacks, they were systematic, industrial, and relentless, an expression of American production capacity and strategic intent on a scale Japan had never faced. Before the B-29s arrived in force, Japanese commanders expected any bombing of the homeland to be limited, symbolic, and costly for the attacker. Earlier American raids, such as the Doolittle raid of 1942, had been daring but small, more psychological than destructive. Japanese air defense planning assumed high-altitude bombers would be vulnerable to interception, weather, and anti-aircraft fire. They believed their fighter pilots, radar network, and a protective barrier of the Pacific would blunt any sustained campaign. The idea of hundreds of heavy bombers appearing night after night over Japanese cities belonged in their minds to theory, not reality. What they experienced was something else entirely. Beginning in earnest in November 1944 and escalating dramatically in early 1945, B-29 formations flew from bases in the Mariana Islands, Saipan, Tinian, and Guam, bases carved out of volcanic rock by American engineers. Each aircraft carried bomb loads exceeding anything previously seen in the Pacific theater. Flying at altitudes beyond the optimal reach of Japanese fighters, and later descending to low altitude for incendiary attacks, the B-29s exploited both technology and tactical adaptation. Japanese radar detected them, but detection did not equal interception. Fighters climbed too slowly. Engines failed. Ammunition ran short. Command posts reported contacts they could not meaningfully stop. American records show the scale with cold precision. On the night of March 9th to 10th, 1945, Operation Meeting House sent more than 300 B-29s over Tokyo alone. They dropped incendiaries designed to exploit the city's wooden construction. Temperatures on the ground rose so high that asphalt melted and oxygen was consumed by firestorms. Japanese civil defense reports recorded entire districts erased within hours. An estimated 100,000 civilians died in a single night. For Japanese commanders trained to think in terms of battlefield engagements, this was not war as they understood it. It was annihilation from the sky. The recurring symbol of this campaign was the bomb itself, not as a single explosion, but as abundance. Each B-29 carried tons of ordnance. Each raid involved hundreds of aircraft. And behind each aircraft stood factories in Kansas, California, and Michigan, producing engines, aluminum skins, and bombs faster than Japan could replace losses. The steady, unbroken drone of engines became a sound of inevitability. Japanese officers wrote in after-action reports that the Americans seemed to possess endless aircraft and limitless fuel. The sound overhead, returning night after night, came to represent a democracy's industrial will translated into air power. Documents from the Japanese Imperial General Headquarters reveal growing alarm. Internal memoranda acknowledged that air defense was failing and that production losses could not be replaced. Diaries of senior officers noted frustration and disbelief at the Americans' ability to sustain operations despite weather, distance, and losses. One naval staff officer wrote that the enemy attacks as if resources are without limit. This was not merely a tactical problem, it was ideological shock. Japan had long emphasized spiritual strength over material capacity. The B-29 raids exposed the brutal reality that spirit alone could not stop machines built by an economy mobilized for total war. Over time, perception shifted. Early confidence turned into grim calculation. Commanders realized that even if fighters shot down a handful of bombers, hundreds more would arrive tomorrow. The destruction of aircraft factories, transportation hubs, and urban centers fed back into the system, weakening Japan's ability to resist. The American bombing campaign was not only destroying targets, it was dismantling assumptions. The belief that the home islands were invulnerable died under the glow of burning cities. Yet, within this devastation lay a deeper symbolism. The B-29 was not just a weapon. It was a manifestation of a political system capable of coordinating science, industry, labor, and strategy on a massive scale. The same system that produced refrigerators, automobiles, and consumer goods in peacetime now produced bombers by the thousands. For Japanese commanders observing the ruins, the implication was unavoidable. They were facing not only an enemy military, but an entire societal engine aligned toward victory. As the months passed and raids intensified, this realization contributed to a broader transformation. By the summer of 1945, Japan's leadership understood that continued resistance meant national destruction. The sound of engines overhead, once shocking, became a grim reminder of imbalance. The bomb, mass-produced, delivered in waves, stood as a symbol of abundance turned into overwhelming force. In the end, the story of the massed B-29 raids is not only about fire and destruction. It is about the collision between expectation and reality, between ideology and material truth. Japanese commanders expected courage and defense to hold the skies. They encountered an industrial democracy capable of sustaining pressure without pause. When the engines faded into the distance at dawn, leaving smoke and silence behind, they left more than ruins. They left a lesson etched into history, that freedom, when paired with industrial abundance and collective will, can reshape the fate of nations from far above the clouds.